This is Rick Johncow with the Project on Youth and Non-Military Opportunities in San Diego, and I'm going to be moderating and presenting for this session. Before we get started, I want to thank the sponsors of this webinar because it's very important that we had this help from them. The webinar is sponsored by the National Network Opposing the Militarization of Youth, NNOMY, and American Friends Service Committee, who is hosting our use of this wonderful meeting system and software. And also, they are loaning us Diana as our tech support for the day. So we really appreciate that. Welcome, everybody. I mean, this is going to be a great crowd. I'm surprised at the response we got. Probably over a dozen states are being represented, DC, even a person from Canada. So we are, we're going to have an interesting interaction, I think, during the course of the webinar. There are going to be times when the attendees are going to be asked to contribute, to answer questions and comments, and so this isn't all going to be me presenting. We are a large group, and that can add challenges to this kind of an event. And I frankly this is only the second time I've ever been a moderator in a webinar. I've mostly been somebody attending webinars. So I hope you all will have patience if there are any glitches, and bear with us. We'll do the best that we can. And fortunately, we have support from someone like Diana who can step in on the technical issues. Okay, we're going to start first, I think, by looking at the agenda. And that is the agenda for the overall webinar, all three parts. I'm showing you this because I think it's important to emphasize, in case this was not clear to everybody, what the focus of this webinar is. This is a webinar that stays on the topic of creating policy. It is not a counter-recruitment workshop. That is, we're not going to spend time talking about how to get access to schools and how to present a counter-recruitment message to students. Those things are good topics, but they're for some other time, not this session, not this particular webinar. Many of you are already active doing organizing in your communities, and you know those things. Some of you don't. We can always talk to you later on. You can contact Project Yano, and we'd be happy to send you information and answer questions about those other topics. But this is all about creating policy. So in the first part, which is today, we're going to do a general overview and identify basic elements that could go into an effective policy to regulate recruiting in schools. On August 28th, Friday, part 2, you're actually going to hear 3 organizers from different communities who are going to talk about the campaigns that they waged to adopt policies. And it'll be a very interesting time. I look forward to hearing those presentations. You'll have a person from Maryland, Pat Elder, will be talking. You'll have a person from Santa Barbara, California, Kate Connell, who worked on probably the most recently adopted policy in the country. And Amy Wagner from the Youth Activists, Youth Allies Network in New York City. Part 3 is sort of a spillover time. If there were any comments or questions that we didn't get around to addressing in either of the previous 2 sessions, we'll have time to do that then. But we also want to make room to talk about what you think you would like to do, and if there are any special questions you want to pose about the possibility of waging a policy campaign in your own community. We hope to be able to give you all a little more personal treatment during that session. And if there's interest in it, we'll also talk about the possibility of approaching a policy at a different level, that is primarily state level. So that's what we're going to cover. I hope I hope you all will come out of this with lots of good ideas, and you'll be able to contribute ideas as well during the course of this. Let's see. So the agenda for today. It's divided into two parts, basically. One of them, the first one, is to identify the kind of recruiting activities that are going on in schools that might be addressed by a policy. And then the second part is to talk about what is and what is not feasible to pursue, because we may think, well, we ought to have a policy that bans all recruiting, but that's not feasible. So we're going to talk a little bit about what is and what is not feasible. And during the course of this, we're going to have, I'm going to invite you to share your ideas on these topics. And we're going to have a scribe, Stephen. Let's see, are you here, Stephen? Let me get your, unmute you. Can you unmute yourself, Stephen? Good. All right. Yes.
I'm muting myself.
Okay. When we go to a whiteboard, we've got several whiteboards here where Stephen will be able to type right on and synthesize your ideas or your responses so that they'll be showing on the board. Later on, we can save this, and then we can distribute it to everybody. So hopefully this is going to be an advantage and be helpful to everyone. Stephen, if you see in your toward your upper left corner, a pen icon up there, right along the side, but right below the Quick Start tab. Do you see that?
Correct.
If you click on that, you'll see the writing tools. And you will see the letter text typing tool that has the A. When you click on that, then you'll be able to put your cursor in the area where we're going to write. And in a second, we'll get to that. And then all you have to do is type the words that you want, and then you click outside of that, and it'll appear to everybody. If you want to change it, there's an eraser tool you can mess with, but just, you know, try to get it right the first time, and you won't have to mess with that. So let's get started. First thing we're going to do is talk about specific recruiting activities that might be addressed. And to do that, what we'd like you to do is think about what you're aware of already that's going on in schools. What are the kinds of activities you've observed or that you're aware of, and that you would like to put on this list so that we can talk about the possibility of a policy with an element that would actually address that. So here's the whiteboard, and as you see, there's already two examples, and I just threw them up there just to show you what we're talking about. One is tables during luncheon at career fairs, and that previous graphic was an illustration of that. Another example is the practice of actually soliciting contact information directly from students when recruiters are in schools. Stephen, I'm wondering if you could mute yourself. There we go. Thank you. You can still hear me, I know, but this way we get rid of the background sound. So I want to open it up right now. If you have another example that you can share with us, raise your hand, click the raise hand button so that we see who you are, and unmute yourself. And then go ahead and share it. Seth, it looks like you're the first one.
Okay, you can hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, great. Thanks, Rick, for working so hard to put this together. So I guess a couple that come to mind, how about classroom presentations by recruiters?
Okay, that's the first one for Stephen.
And recruiting vehicles, trucks and so on.
Okay. All right. If you could click the hand button again to remove yourself and mute yourself again, we'll wait and see. This is Stephen's first time doing this, so. Hang on a second, and then we'll get you, Richard.
I click on the pencil, and then I click on AA. Text
yeah,
tool.
Just the text tool.
Right.
Then put your cursor in the window, and you're not typing. It's not working.
No, there it goes. That's not working.
Did you click out? click outside and it'll should appear.
Oh, it's in yellow.
You can change the color to a darker color. We'll get it right in just a second here.
And the second one was a truck recruiting.
Yes.
Truck outside schools.
Or in schools.
Do remember to click somewhere else on the screen so that it actually submits the text. Perfect, there it is.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's move on. I'm going up the list. Richard, can you unmute yourself and share your idea or ideas?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. One thing I've seen done is they have these climbing walls, and they get people, get the kids, you know, in harnesses and straps, and they go up a wall.
Great.
And, it's kind of like a, I don't know, like a ranger training or something like that.
Okay. Thank you. Be sure to unmute yourself, or mute yourself rather, and re-click the hand button. Is it Deidra? Can you unmute yourself?
Hi, this is Dee.
Thank you.
So I have two examples. One example is the targeting of students through the STEM program. I don't know if anyone else has also experienced that, but I've directly experienced that with my son. And also, the second one is through alternative after-school programs. I know at his school he was a incoming sixth grader, and they promoted in this after-school program and weekend program as sort of a tutorial for students that were quote-unquote at risk. And so I saw the targeting of at-risk students in addition to undocumented students.
Thank you. I think Pat was the next person. And Dee, can you mute yourself again and then put your hand down? Thank you. Pat.
Yes, this is Pat. Thank you. Having the opt-out form included in registration packets.
Okay. That's actually going to go in the next list, which is the policy, what elements can go in a policy. So if you could hold that, we'll put it on the next whiteboard.
Oh, sure. Sorry. Thanks.
But what you are saying, though, is recruiters have access to school lists, so that could be written down. Okay. Stephen, you may have to move your cursor over to the left pretty soon. Kevin, you were the next one. And Pat, can you be sure to put your hand down? Thank you.
Military sponsorship of school events. For example, at my daughter's high school, I know that it's common for the local National Guard recruiting station to be present at a back-to-school event and have a giant bounce house type of thing, and have some simple games where kids can go up and win prizes.
Okay. Great. Who's next? Anyone else? No one's mentioning ASVAB testing? Does anyone want to explain ASVAB testing briefly? Dee?
Yes, hi. In high school, I did take the ASVAB test, and basically it's what I understood as an aptitude test. I forgot what the abbreviation stands for. It was administered at the school. However, I didn't take it at the school. At that time, I was involved in JROTC, and I actively did want to become involved in the military until I found out what it was all about. I scored a 50 on this test, and what was told to me was that, I'm sorry, I scored it to 49. And what was told to me is that if I scored a 50 or more, I would earn a scholarship of $50,000. My understanding now is that those amounts have changed and the way that they allocate the money has changed. So that's as much as I know.
So it sounds like there is something to add besides ASVAB testing to what Dee said, which is the promise of money for college. Pat, you're next.
Well, there's a lot of things that we can look at. There's with ASVAB testing, and that would be to make sure that your school, if the test is offered, offers option 8. Option 8 is the release option that means that the recruiting command will administer the test, but that the test results can't be used for recruitment purposes. So,
Pat, can you explain more of that and hold on to it till we get to the next screen, because that's when we're going to talk about the actual policy elements that can address these things?
Sure.
Is Richard, I think Richard's next.
Yeah, you can disregard that.
Okay, all right. Kate?
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so a couple things, well, related to also the recruitment vehicles, not having weapons or simulated weapons on display, like at a table. Also, recruiters sort of having this free access, kind of roaming freely on campus. They become, so acceptable that they often don't sign in the office, that kind of thing, and don't stick to one location, like around their table or in a specified area, like a career center. And also related to the climbing walls, what we've seen a lot with that is like kids getting a sticker or some kind of gift if they do a pull-up, and that's also related to them getting the student contact info, which you already have the example. And what I've also seen is there being like a survey that is a way for them to get student contact info. So the students would fill out some sort of survey and, put their contact info, and there'll be a disclaimer on there saying this will not be used for recruiting activities, or you don't have to be recruited, or that kind of thing.
Okay. Great. Thank you, Kate. Be sure, everyone, after you've spoken, to put your hand down and remute yourself if you haven't. Thank you. Maybe if there's one more, we'll take that, and then we're going to go on to the next whiteboard. Any others? Michelle.
Remember to unmute yourself, Michelle.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. My experience as a 5th grade teacher is having recruiters come in during career day and showing a promotional video and kind of amping up the students during that time frame.
Wow, and that's 5th grade.
Correct.
All right. Thank you. So I think you got a pretty good picture from all of this. And of course, there are going to be some more examples that could be listed here. But in general, you get the idea of like the movement of recruiters around the school, the kind of activities, kind of access that they have. And usually access is going to be the main focal point of any policy. So we're going to get to that well, we're going to do it right now, in fact. But first, let's see. I've got to go one more screen. I'm sorry, I'm kind of new at this. Okay, identify what is and is not feasible to pursue. Now, what we're talking about is what you can pursue with a policy. So this is where we hear the ideas that a couple of you I've already brought up about what can be done about some of those issues. So ASVAB testing only under option 8, and maybe since Pat started to talk about that, you could just explain option 8 to people. Are you wanting to do that?
Okay. I think there is a policy, and it's 601-4, United States Military Entrance Process and Command Regulation, and it basically says to schools, hey, if you'd like the military to come in and test, it's a wonderful career exploration program. Well, actually, it's a very flawed career exploration program, but they sell it to high schools. They make high schools think that this is just the greatest thing to help kids figure out what they want to do when they grow up. So it is a flawed career exploration program, but I don't really go after that because there's so many so-called experts that swear by the thing. So it's best to simply address attempting to have school officials be proactive in selecting release option 8. And what that means is that a kid will take the test, but the military won't be able to use the test results for recruiting purposes. Now, it is a screwy deal, and it's a little bit complex, but the military actually proctors the exam. You see, all school records are protected under federal law by the Buckley Amendment, which was passed back in the 1980s, and it basically says in order for the schools to release anything about kids, any school records, then you got to get parental consent. And the military says, well, this isn't a school record. We proctor the test, so it's not an academic record. It's not a student record. So the military comes in. Usually, it's one civilian employee with a dozen or so faculty that are involved in proctoring the thing. But long story short, the military actually has the results. They proctor the test. They'll come into a school with 150 kids and then walk out of the school with results of 150 kids, including demographic information, including social security numbers, and 3 hours of test information. It's extremely valuable because they already troll the internet. They already look at Facebook. They already have a picture of what Johnny can and can't do and what he's like. What they don't have is the cognitive side. Now they get it through the ASVAB. And so by selecting option 8, that stops the military in its tracks. It really kills them because it means that they're doing the program as a kind of public service and they can't use the results for recruiting purposes. So we go after option 8. And what happens when you go after option 8, you explain to people and you start emailing them, as I've done to several hundred places across the country. They come to realize that it is a bogus program, that it is a deceptive program that's predicated on lies. And so a lot of them leave the program. And so we have a drift now. We've got over 2,200 schools, I think, nationwide that have selected option 8. And we just have a drift of schools dropping off that don't want to have anything to do with it anymore. And so you have the outgoing recruiting commander, Bachelet, basically saying, look, America's high schools have drawn the wrong conclusions. They hate the military, and so they're locking us out by not allowing us to test children. And we know it's about the privacy. Parents should have the final say on whether information is released on their kids, not the recruiting command. That's the battle we've waged, and we've actually got a bill all the way to the floor in Connecticut, and the recruiting command put a bogus letter out, which I just put on the counter-recruitment list, that was full of like a half a dozen lies.
Pat, we need to get another idea from someone here. Michelle, I think, did you raise your hand?
No, I'm sorry, it must have been a mistake.
Okay. All right, then. Are there other ideas of what might go into a recruiting policy? Pat?
As I mentioned on the other slide, we have the school district that I'm doing counter-recruiting in, with regards to the opt-out form, has included in the registration packet, and all the registration is done online. So it becomes part of the registration process for each school year.
So a very easy opt-out process could be dictated in a policy.
Yes.
Thank you. Bart, welcome, Bart. Can you, are we able to hear you? Because I don't see an audio icon for you. Diana, can you tell if we have audio from Bart?
Hello. Okay. So, Bart, we have a few people that are called in on the phone that we don't know who you are because we have no way of identifying you. So I'm going to unmute all of the phone folks. And, Bart, if you can go ahead and speak through one of those, we'll know who you are.
Okay. Hi, Rick. This is Bart. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah. You're in number 5? No. Okay. Go ahead.
Got me. Anyway, I was just going to say, addressing the idea of unrestricted access to all areas of the school, if you can change that policy to restrict them to the Career Center along with other college recruiters and counter-recruiters.
Okay. So, Stephen, are you able to write on the board for us still?
Yes.
Let's see, was there anyone else?
Well, this is Barbara. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I tried to speak before, but I guess I was mute. And Pat covered the ASVAB, and that's a very important campaign to get option 8 in every state. But I also thought I'd throw in JROTC. I know it's unrealistic, but I think something could be done to remove that from the school, or at least the taxpayers' contribution to a military program in a school.
Okay. Stephen, there also was a suggestion for an easy opt-out process. And restrictions on the location of recruiters. So while Stephen's writing that up, anyone else?
I can take a shot at that. Marketing to 8th graders for the J. ROTC program.
Okay. D, you're next.
If we could add a counter military recruitment requirement, so if a military recruiter will be presenting, let's say, at a career fair, then the school also has to have a counter military recruiter present, or a peace organization present.
Okay. Requires school to provide the other side, or a balanced speaker. Anyone else? Okay. I think if we don't have any other ideas to throw on the board, I do have something to share that is basically a collection from probably 15 or more policies that we have researched around the country. And, well, actually, before this is a good time to do that. I'm going to do that right now. I'm going to show you on the screen now. I need to enlarge. I hope all of you, I hope that's readable to everyone. If it's not, can somebody raise their hand and jump up and down or something?
The way, if it's hard for you to read, in the top right corner of the document, you're going to see a plus and a minus sign. Those are Zoom tools. You can go ahead and zoom in for yourselves to whatever degree you like. Okay.
Thank you, Diana. Kate, you raised your hand. Was that about the previous question? Did you have another idea to contribute about what could go in a policy?
Oh yeah, but I mean, some of them are in what you're about to present. So okay. I was just going to talk about, what was feasible, limiting the amount of recruiter visits and how many recruiters can come during those visits is totally feasible as long as it's the same for all types of recruiters. Okay. And then the collecting contact info directly from students. Those, to me, are the two most important parts.
Oh, okay, Stephen, did you get enough of that to be able to summarize it there?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to go to this page, and this is where you should use your zoom in buttons, the plus symbol if it's hard to read. Again, these are policy elements that we found all across the country. This isn't all of the possible elements, but it is the vast majority of them. And what I'm going to do is just focus on the ones that are bold, because those are the most important ones, I think, to make sure you have. It doesn't mean you shouldn't look at the rest of them. And by the way, we'll be able to send this document out to people. And Stephen, I think you need to mute yourself. Thank you. The first one is a B, and this is, Kate kind of broached this. This is very, very, very important. If you write and propose a policy, it has to apply universally to all types of recruiters. And the reason is very simple. No Child Left Behind will penalize the school if they don't give military recruiters the same access that is being given to college and employers. So you have to do it that way, and that's very important. The next one, requiring equal access for all recruiters, including entities offering alternative information. This is where you have an opportunity, if you're writing this policy and the board may pass it, you have an opportunity to build into it equal access for counter-recruiters. So don't neglect that. That's important. Going down to E, Kate mentioned limiting recruiting visits. Some policies have limited it to 3 per year per organization. So Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, they all get 3. Some have limited it to 2. You pretty much have to allow each branch to do it, because if you say any military representative counts as one of the 2 visits, then you're going to have to do the same for colleges and universities, and that then can become a problem. G, requires all recruiters to sign in and out, and the reason for that is you need a paper trail. If you're going to limit the number of visits, you have to have at least somewhere to look for a record. Doesn't mean they're going to follow the requirement, but have it there at least in the policy, because then if they're not signing in, you can nail them for not signing in. Specify how long the records have to be kept, because some schools, they just tear them up and trash them at the end of the school year, and you don't want that. You want to know right all the way up to June who's been visiting, or at least the end of the school year. H, prohibit recruiting activities that disrupt the conduct of normal school activities or interfere with. Now, here's where we're talking about assemblies and things like the recruiting trucks that come in. Sometimes teachers will excuse their students for the whole period to go visit it. That's disrupting normal school activities, so that's important. J, limits recruiters to a specific confined space. That's been mentioned. And K, prohibits recruiters from pursuing or approaching students. This is very important because even if you have them stationed at a table, they can be beckoning to students. They can be hawking, basically. And as students walk by, they want to be left alone. They don't want to have to deal with this person standing there who's inviting them to come over. So if you can put in an element like this that says that they have to wait to be approached by students seeking the information, that really helps. Then the next one is kind of related to that. L is prohibiting soliciting contact information directly from students, or requiring it as a condition to participate in an activity or get an award or a gift. The Marines are very big on setting up their chin-up bar, and then in order to hop up onto the chin-up bar and prove your manhood or womanhood and get the T-shirt, for example, for the most pull-ups, you have to fill out a contact form. And the same thing is true if a recruiting truck comes. They most often will say, in order to go inside the truck, you have to fill out this form. So this is a way of getting around the No Child Left Behind opt-out provision. If they go straight to the students and get the information, then it bypasses the school itself. So putting that in there would be important. Displays of weapons or weapons simulators, that's important. This, again, can help you keep the trucks out or other kinds of displays. And the trucks, the big trucks especially, always have weapon simulators. So that's an important one to put in there. So these are some elements. There's just a couple more here. The ASVAB test we've already talked about. Okay, so we don't really need to go into that. Definitions, have a section of definitions, because if you don't, if you're not really specific about what you mean by things, by the terms, then they'll use that as a loophole to get access or to avoid the guidelines. So it's important to have those definitions. Our implementation, and this is actually half the job. It's not getting the policy passed that is the whole goal. The other goal has to be to make sure that it gets implemented afterwards, and it can require almost as much work, unfortunately. But you need to be real specific about how and when the policy and its requirements are to be implemented and who's to enforce it. Whether it's the principal and the principal's appointee, I mean, that's often the kind of phrase that's used, the appointed person. But there has to be something there. And then S, a penalty is really important, because what's the motivation for a recruiter to follow the guidelines if they can't be punished in some way? And again, this has to apply to everybody, not just military recruiters. But we have, and in several other cities, and when I say we, I mean San Diego, where I am, we have a provision that says that if they fail to conform and follow the guidelines, that they can lose their access for 12 months. That's a calendar year, not just to the end of the school year. Because if it's just the end of the school year, and by the way, the legal team in San Diego, the legal office, tried to just totally drop this provision when they wrote a procedure based on the board's policy. They dropped it, and we said, no, put it back. That was the board's decision, and it has to be there. But if it doesn't say 12 months at least, the recruiters in May can totally violate it with impunity, you know, ignore the policy, and they know that in 1 month the counter is reset. So you have to have some kind of a time frame for the penalty. The rest of this is all, I mean, it's important, but those are what I would consider to be the key points. And like I said, we will be able to send this document out to all of you. Is there anything that anyone thinks was missing from this that should be mentioned? Who was that? Pat.
Firing ranges, did you cover that at all?
No. Go ahead and mention that. And we only have about 5 minutes left, so we've got to.
Yeah, the firing ranges and lead particulate matter flying throughout the school. It's a pretty low lying fruit.
And by firing ranges, you mean specifically what?
I mean, there are over 1,600 programs across the country affiliated with high schools that are also affiliated with the civilian marksmanship program, where kids are in the JROTC programs and they fire weapons. I mean, in Montgomery County, Maryland, in classrooms, where you actually have world history kids coming in afterward and there's lead particulate matter all over the floor and flying in the air, and you have different people calling for special types of air conditioner vents and different types of cleaning solutions to take care of it. And in my county, you know, people roll around in it, and kids come in and they track it around the school, and it's a health hazard.
Yep.
So you'd think that people would start to pay attention to that.
Yeah, you would. That brings up the subject of JROTC, but before we talk about that, we have a text question asking if we can get a sample policy including definitions. Yes, there is a website that has links to over 20 different policies that have been adopted in various school jurisdictions. And so we're going to provide you with a link to all those policies. And you will find several that have the definitions. You'll find some that have no definitions, but you'll be able to basically peruse that stack of policies and see what you want. But yes, definitely there will be some that have policies or definitions, I should say. Since we started here on JROTC, let's now talk about what's unfeasible, because while Barbara said, yeah, it might seem kind of daunting and not too hopeful, some groups do take on JROTC. This list that I have here, and you may need to zoom in a little bit, these are just a few things that occurred to me that are not that feasible to put into a policy. It doesn't say anything about JROTC, but I'm going to make a general statement. It's broad, but basically it's this. There is no school district in the country with JROTC already in place that will remove it if you approach it as an open campaign challenging the basis for JROTC, challenging the curriculum, challenging the politics of it. No school district will do that. San Francisco was our biggest hope, and a few years back they actually voted to phase it out, but before a year went by they were suddenly voting to restore it. And not only that, but it even caused the city to vote in a referendum approval of having the program. So that's San Francisco. Now, there are ways to get rid of it. If school board members are concerned about budget cuts and you feed them information about the cost, the true cost of the program, school boards have been known to cut the program on that basis. The other reason that sometimes leads to the ejection of JROTC is when the enrollment drops below the minimum required. The minimum required is 100 students or 10% of the student body. And we had an example right here in San Diego at Mission Bay High School where over a 3 years period with students agitating against it, the enrollment dropped to 50 approximately in the entire school, with 2 full-time instructors supporting only 50 students, and they were forced to get rid of it. So those are the two, pretty much those are the only 2 ways that JROTC units have been disbanded in the country. And so if you want to take that up, you need to be very careful about how you do it, because as soon as you make it into a public campaign, you've almost automatically ruled out any chance of getting rid of it. Let me go on to the other elements. We already talked about how the policy has to be inclusive, universal, and so that first item there, language that focuses primarily on military recruiting, that should not be in your policy. You should not focus primarily on military recruiting. Always choose phrases and languages to make it clear this is a policy that applies to all recruiters. Some people will say, well, isn't that going to harm our students' chances of finding out about college? Generally, no. And the reason is that, first of all, college recruiters can be there for career days or college nights if you put that into the policy. But secondly, colleges and universities don't have to beat the bushes, pretty much. They get way more applicants than the number of slots that are open. And it's just not the way colleges find students these days. There are some cases where you might have a high school that has a special relationship with a nearby campus, and then you'll have to look carefully at the language that you use so that it doesn't preclude students from taking advanced placement classes at that college, for example. classes that would count for college credit, there are ways to do that. And when we talk about the Santa Barbara policy tomorrow, that might come up because that was an issue for them when they were talking to their school board. But in general, the people who are going to lose access, it's not going to be colleges. It's going to be primarily military recruiters, period. So B, an equal access requirement that does not include entities offering alternative information on military careers. Make sure that you do the opposite, that when you write the policy that it does include entities offering alternative information. As we said before, it's your opportunity to build in equal access. C, allowing a distinction between active and passive methods of soliciting student contact information. This came up in Santa Barbara, and Kate, I don't know if you want to talk about this tomorrow or now, but they had to do a dance around that because the principals and others didn't want to rule out having a clipboard on the table and students being allowed to come and just put their name down, whereas that was not the goal of the policy. So you'll have to make sure that you're not creating that opening.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we only have 5 minutes, so maybe it'd be better to talk about it on Friday.
Okay.
If you want.
All right, Friday then. D, language that implies students may individually select option 8 when taking the ASVAB. That's a deception. A lot of school personnel are under the wrong impression that that's possible. It is not possible. The form has nowhere for a student to check a box and say, unlike the rest of the students here in the room taking the test, I don't want my information released. The system's not designed for that. So if someone wants to modify your ASVAB provision in the policy and insist that that's the case, then you need to have a debate with them about that because it's false that that's even possible. Mentoring and enforcement monitoring and enforcement requirements that would overtax school personnel. Okay, that some of you are going to say, what the hell? If they're letting the recruiters in, tough. They need to still step up and do everything they can to make sure their kids are protected. I can agree with that. But when it comes to getting a policy passed, what you don't want is a unified voice of principals and counselors and others saying, we oppose it, when the motivation for that is going to be the amount of work that's thrown on their shoulders because of it. So take that into consideration. Try to be aware of how challenging it is to work in a school and what it's like for counselors and others. And if you show that you're sensitive to that, you'll get a lot farther with your proposal. Are there any other things that people want to mention before we come to an end here about elements that people maybe should avoid? Or do you have comments or questions about what I've said so far? Is that you, Barbara?
No, well, my first thought is whenever I'm speaking with someone is not to make it seem military. As you have said, to focus on the main issue, the positive things that can be changed, because once you mention it as against the military in some way, you lose the conversation.
Okay. Ed, can you unmute yourself and share your thoughts? I think you're still muted.
Ed, I'll unmute you. Go ahead. You might be muted on your phone as well, Ed, because it looks like you are unmuted on WebEx now.
How's that?
Great.
Can you hear me then?
Yes.
I was recently on my high school reunion. We had a tour of my high school by JROTC students, and I was able to talk to this one girl for a while, and my concern is that they can get credit for the classes as in different categories, and they need to do the program for 3 years, which I think is too much to get credit. Perhaps maybe we could try to limit their access to only 2 semesters for their duration in high school or something like that?
I'm not sure what credit they're being offered, but dangling dual credit in front of them is a common thing. Usually physical education is the thing that draws students to join JROTC, is that they can avoid PE classes. They get the credit.
You mentioned other classes that they can take besides PE.
Well, the local school district decides whether they want to accept the JROTC curriculum for a science credit or any other one. So you're going to have, if that's what's going on, you have to deal with the local school board. There's nothing broad that says schools have to give that kind of credit. It's really up to the school district. Now, in California, unfortunately, JROTC teachers are now allowed, if they meet certain minimum requirements, to teach PE within their JROTC classes. So they have to apply for that special authorization, but that's a statewide policy now. So we can't do much about that at the school district level, except school boards still can decide whether or not to even allow a PE credit for JROTC. But the teachers can say, I am credentialed to teach PE. And that makes it hard to get the school board to take a different position and say that's not going to be allowed. Any other comments? We're just about done here. Okay, I think I have one more slide, I think, to put up. Maybe more than one. Okay, well, we've already done that. Here we go. This just mentions what was asked in the chat window, that there are these links to different policies, and we'll provide the URL for you to go to the website where you can then access all of these policies. And what we plan to do is at the end of the webinar, we'll send out a packet of supplemental information that will go to everybody. So this is the end of session 1, and the next session is actually on Friday. Why do I have Monday there? August 28th is a Friday. Please ignore that. That day, but it's Friday the 28th, and we're going to be talking about, again, we're going to have 3 different co-presenters who actually were directly involved in waging successful campaigns. Some campaigns got only limited success, but they still did the work, and they're going to describe to you what they did, what they learned from that experience, the lessons they learned, and how they made it happen. And that's where you kind of get down to the nitty-gritty. And I think I'm hoping at least that all of you have that as your goal, which is to do something to expand the number of schools that have policies to regulate recruiting. So thank you very much, everybody. I hope we'll see all of you on Friday. If you can't access via a computer, you can make a phone call. You can use your telephone to log in and at least listen. I look forward to it. So long.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye. See you Friday.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks.